Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the Dental Office Managers Webinar. Preparing your practice for 2021. What a crazy, crazy year. And of course, I don't have to tell those that are on the webinar today, enormous changes in 2020. Who could have ever in this world predicted COVID-19? So what happened in 2020 from our offices? We had layoffs, furloughs. Some of our practices had up to 90% turnover rate, terminations, CDC, OSHA guidelines, office closings, reopenings. And now we're in the midst of the COVID-19 surge. So we want to really, this is going to pass. We would really want to take a look at what's the state of the dental industry. Where are we at now? What are we doing? Where do we need to go in 2021, which is only about 2 weeks away? Well, really, before we get into the metrics and what we're going to be looking at and how we're going to get into it, really want to spend a few minutes and say a special thank you for the Georgia Dental Association. They have done an enormous job through this whole COVID-19. And for those who are not members, I can't urge you enough, those on the webinar today, to join the GDA. What they've done behind the scenes, what they're doing on a daily basis, again, it is just phenomenal. So a couple people really to thank and gracious enough for their time and effort to this whole thing. Frank Alpano, Executive Director, thank you so much for what you've done. Scott LaFranco, staying ahead of the law, the legislature, keeping all the doctors up to date. Scott Piper, who is managing all this and marketing and coordinating, just an enormous job. And also let's thank the leadership, Dr. Range and Dr. Powell, who I know have worked tirelessly throughout this entire process. Dr. Range, president, and Dr. Powell, incoming president. So again, thank you to the GDA for what they're doing. And I would encourage everyone to start planning, for the annual GDA event. It's going to be, great as usual. So we are very proud to be on their program today. So amazing speakers. I can't really say enough about the speakers that we have, what's on the pulse, what are our doctors looking at. First and foremost, Lacey Phillips, partner with Practice Dynamics. Lacey, for those who don't know, is a national speaker. And we are so thankful to have her on our program today. And she's spoken at the hit. I'm just going to name 2 or 3. It could be like a whole volume of books where you've spoken to. So we got the Hitman, Chicago Midwinter, Yankee Dental, the ABA. So enormous credentials on Lacey's side. And she's going to really drill down as to what is going on in these practices. I've got some questions I'm going to pick her brain on and see exactly what's going on in our offices. And she's got her definite hand on the pulse there. And then Trey Witt, CPA with Dent Moses, partner in the firm. Trey works almost exclusively with dental clients throughout the country. Trey has an office in Atlanta and also in Birmingham, Alabama. And he does tax, accounting, financial, and transactional consulting for dental practices. And he's also a speaker also. He's spoken at the University of Alabama Dental School, at district meetings, the Gulf Coast Dental Conference. So Trey has also got his pulse on really what's going on in the practices. And he's going to talk about some things that we're looking at year end. We've got a great slide presentation. And then from a flow standpoint, what we're going to look at is Lacey's going to go first. And we're going to, again, ask some questions. And then because of her time is so gracious, she's going to jump. She's got some other commitments. So we're just glad that she's able to squeeze us into this great conference here. And then Trey is going to have a slide present, and then I'll close it out, and then we'll have some couple question and answers, maybe 1 or 2 questions and answers. and then we will conclude the program in about an hour or so. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into Lacey's questions. So Lacey, you're seeing clients all over the country, and we're talking a lot about leadership in today's world, in the dental practices, in business. So I want to know from your perspective, what have we learned? And I say we, the industry, the dental practices, learned about leadership in the dental practices since COVID-19, which I know has changed a lot in the marketplace. So tell us what you're seeing in leadership and how COVID-19 has changed that.
Okay, well, before I do that, I want to first say thank you to you. Oh my gosh, your daily, weekly pushes, the information, especially March. I mean, March, April, May, when you were sending us all of the information, I was just instantly forwarding it to all of our clients. So I so appreciate you. I love your brain. I love your team. I appreciate everything you do for us as a dental community. I also want to say I miss all you Georgia people. Georgia's like one of my favorite states, and I so miss being there. Missed Hinman 2020, and it looks like we're going kind of a virtual, hands-on Hinman. So I am speaking this year, but it's going to be virtual. So I really miss you, Georgia people. And then just a little shout out to Trey and the CPAs in the world, because if you guys don't have a CPA that's specific to dental, please talk to somebody who is. In the last 3 months, we've changed 3 of our clients into dental specific CPAs because of what's going on in the industry. So really great speaker lineup today, Stuart. I appreciate you inviting me to be a part of this. Okay, leadership, what are we learning? What I am hearing across the board is, wow, we really didn't know what we didn't know. And we say that a lot, you know, sometimes we just duck our heads and we just keep moving forward and we keep daily practice in the dental office. And I think what COVID has taught all of us more than anything is there's a lot of things that we are missing in a dental practice. There's a lot of things as a small business. There's a lot of things from a systems standpoint that we didn't have in place, maybe still don't, and we're realizing it's an issue. It's very much an issue, the things that we don't have. And we find right now that our team needs leadership more than ever. Larry Gazzardo, I love you. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for being here today. But what we're hearing from our teams is 100%, we need the leadership now more than ever. We need the doctors, the ownership of the practice to be our leaders. And I just want to state this right now. Not every dentist is a leader. Maybe not, you have no desire to be a leader. You know, you go to school for all of these years, you take these dental classes, you learn how to do amazing dentistry, and then you graduate and we say, hey, buy a business, hire a team, be successful, be a great leader, and what dentists really want is to be a dentist. And so it's okay if you're not the best leader or you don't think you are. We all can get better, right? We all can get better, or we find somebody in the practice who is a great leader and we lean on that person. So we need the leadership, Stuart. Again, what we're hearing is the things that we didn't know that we needed or that we knew we needed, they're yelling at us right now that we need these things.
You're hearing this all across the country from your doctors everywhere.
We are, and from the team. The team is reaching out to us as well and saying, you know, we kind of did whatever we did and we just made the practice work. But now more than ever, we're getting questions from patients that we're unsure on how to answer. We're getting questions from outside the community on healthcare, on dentistry, and we are not sure how we should answer these questions. So even the team at this point is saying, we need some guidelines, we need some systems put in place, and we need some doctor leadership here.
So in adding to that, so when you speak to the dental offices, the owners and the teams, so what have these offices realized since all this has taken place since March of 2020? with COVID-19 just hit, what do they realize? I know that's a 4-hour topic.
I know, right? I'm like, wow, that's such a, okay.
That's
How
a
about
long list. I know.
Let's start with systems. The most basic thing in human life, having systems in place. So think of a system as something that happens every single day. Where do we park? Which door do we come in? What's the alarm code? Who turns on the lights? Who sets up the computers? Those are systems, right? Having that documented. But now we have patient intake forms. We have COVID intake forms. We have, how do we handle if the temperature is 1 degree off with a patient? How do we handle if the patient doesn't want to wear a mask whenever they're in the office? How do we deal with PPE? Are we charging the patients for PPE? Are we billing it to insurance? Is insurance reimbursing? These are systems that we have to have in place. Legal, guidance from you, accounting guidance from CPAs like Trey, and then leadership guidance and practice management guidance. These are all systems that we need to put in place. And then here's the other thing that we're missing. How are the patients looking at us now? We've always been scrutinized in healthcare, right? Somebody's going to look at us, look at our business, look at the building, look at team members a little bit differently when you walk into a healthcare office than you walk into a hardware store, right? And so now they're really, really looking at us. They're really looking at the building. They're looking at the office. They're looking at the dust bunnies. Because believe it or not, I mean, it's true. It's so true, because how we present ourselves professionally, physically, emotionally, our verbal skills dictates what kind of dentistry we're getting. So doctor, you may be the best dentist in Georgia. You may be phenomenal, but if your business, the aesthetic part of it, the team, the verbal skills, how patients are treated, if it's not there, you're a terrible dentist. And that's something we're seeing more.
Well, you just led into the next question that I have for you. So moving forward, 2021, boom, 3 weeks from now. So what can our offices and doctors and leadership in those offices do to ensure that the patients are receiving the care they want, our teams feel safe, which is huge, and heard? And then the business of dentistry, how do they need to be successful in that? I mean, that's a big question. You could spend 2 hours on probably each sort of subpart.
I love this. I love this. So first, let's start with how do we do this, right? First of all, listen. It's such a small word, but it's a huge accomplishment, is to be able to listen to other people. So we need to listen to our team. We need to have a sit-down conversation, a vulnerable conversation for both the doctor and the team. Open communication. Do you feel safe? What can we do better? What are we doing right now that we should be doing better? And we need to hear it. We need to listen to it, and then we need to take action.
Now with that, so are you saying daily huddles? Or are you saying weekly meetings? Or are you saying monthly meetings?
Sure. So I love, I'm all about the AM huddle. We need to have an AM huddle. Everybody should. But the AM huddle is all about the day. What drives our day? So for example, how was yesterday? What would we have changed? How does today look? Same day opportunities. Are there any patients that we need to make sure get special attention? That's our AM huddle, right? Weekly, I like an admin meeting. So doctor and administration, what should I know? What happened this week? What's coming up that I need to be aware of? And then we have monthly meetings with the entire team, 100%. I like an agenda so that it's not just a complaint session or we feel like we're not getting anything done. Bring it to the table. It's got to be a vulnerable, open action item meeting. Okay. So to go along with that, What we love to do is this little exercise. If you guys have a pen and paper, I'm going to take 3 minutes. I'm going to tell you about this little exercise that I want you guys to do. You're going to get your entire team together. You're going to pair up. Don't get your favorite person in the office. You're always with your favorite person in the office. Step out and find somebody you don't like. Just kidding. You like everybody you work with. I know you do. So you're going to pair up. You're going to get a notebook and a pen. Each pair of people are going to start out in the parking lot, or some of you start in the operatory. I don't care. But essentially, here's what you're doing. As pairs, you're walking through every step of your business, parking lot, walking into the business, the reception area. When you say hi to, when the patients say hi to you, you're going to look at every single thing that the patient looks at, and you're going to write a pro list and a con list. What looks great? What looks amazing? Congratulate ourselves. Oops. What do we need to work on? What are we missing here? The dust bunnies behind the patient bathroom door. Maybe the front business office area looks a little cluttered when patients are saying hello or we're taking money from them. Maybe you're walking past a dirty sterilization area as you're getting to operatories. So you are literally the patient. You are seeing your practice through the patient's eyes, and you're making notes. And then you come together as a team and you say, wow, here's the things that we're doing great. Here are the things that we need to work on. On the things that you need to work on, bust them out into this can be done short term within the next 7 days. This needs a little bit more time, 90 days. And whoa, we need whole new signage, or we need a new roof. This is going to be a little bit more expensive. You call Trey and say, how do I afford this, right? So, so that's your exercise that you're going to do as a team, looking at your practice through the patient's eyes. And then you're going to set that example and let the patients know that you hear them. The last part of that, what was the question? The team, the patients, what was your other one?
Business and dentistry.
Business. Thank you very much. Oh, this is a touchy subject, and I'm sorry, doctors, but we have to look at 2020. Where are you ending up for 2020? What's your ultimate goal for 2021? Your wildly important goal. Even if it's 15% growth to make up for 2020, let's figure out how to do it. I will tell you right now, one of our offices, we set the wildly important goal for the end of 2021. The goal is going to be sliding. So for example, they work on a BAM bonus system, but it's not going to be the same amount every single month because we're going to slide it up. So the first quarter of the year is just simply hitting what we know we can hit, because otherwise it's demoralizing. When you have a bonus system and you're touting that, you're like, oh, I'm going to give you a bonus, but it's absolutely unrealistic and there's no way they can ever reach it. That's demoralizing. So let's have a sliding goal schedule that still gets you to your wildly important goal at the end of 2021, but that's doable as well. And that's the other thing I would say, Stuart, we're hearing, as a matter of fact, just yesterday, I had a doctor call me in the morning. He said, Lacey, I'm struggling. I'm pulling from my savings account, but what I know more than anything is what I'm missing. And I need help. What can you do bare bones for me? And then can we build up to a bigger accomplishment with coaching? 100% we can do that. And that's what you should look for in your coaches. Say, hey, can we start virtual, and can you just have conversations with me and look at my 2020 numbers? And then can we build up from there and help me become successful again? So that's what we're looking at.
Well, then you get into the issue of learning. So how has learning changed? And then how does that affect the leadership of the practice? Because this whole COVID-19 has changed the whole learning process. So how does that work?
And I miss our meetings. I miss being on the stage so much. I love being here in front of you guys like this, but man, do I miss the stage. Learning has changed in that we all know we do need it. And the entire office, not just somebody who needs continuing education to keep a license. The entire office needs the continual education, the continual training. One of the things that we do in dentistry, it's crazy. I've been in dentistry since 1992. It's what we do. We throw somebody in a chair, be it an operatory or a business office, and say, here you go, do this. Without a whole lot of training. I don't know why we do it. It's just something that we do. It's got to change. We need to make sure that people feel confident saying the things that they're going to say, that they feel confident in their education, in their training, in their experience, to make sure then that the patients feel confident and comfortable and safe in our business location. Go ahead.
So that patients, perfect. What do patients want now? What do they want now?
Patients they still don't want to pay their bill. Don't worry, you guys, that hasn't changed at all. They still don't want to pay.
That's still going to change.
They want phenomenal care, feel safe.
Yep.
They want to make sure that you're following all of the protocols.
For zero pay.
With zero pay. But okay, so all joking aside, we do have to make dentistry affordable now more than ever. We have to offer options. We need to make sure that we hear what they're saying and that we offer them the options to make dentistry affordable. Because here's the thing, this is not cosmetic surgery. This is not, we know in dentistry, everything that happens here affects the rest of our entire body. Diabetes, blood pressure, pregnancy, heart disease, it affects. So this is needed. This is not an elective health care that we are in, folks. This is a mandatory. We need to hear what they need. We need to make them feel safe and comfortable, and we have to help them say yes to options to afford it.
Well, I tell you, those are 5 great things, and I've never heard of a great idea of taking it from the outside in, pick an associate, walking through and drilling it down to figure out what the patient, what the patient looks at. And I've heard this expression, and it definitely applies to what you're saying. First they see you, then they hear you.
Absolutely. And we just did this in Florida last week, Stuart. Bonnie and I just did this with an office in Florida. What this also does is it gives the team a voice, because what came out of this exercise was things that the team recognized months ago, but didn't quite feel comfortable saying to the doctor or to the doctor's wife or to the business owner because they didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But this gives the team a voice to say, hey, I'm not sure I feel comfortable with this in the office. What do you guys think about this solution instead?
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I know you got to run. So Lacey is always, I just learned a couple things that I never heard anyone speak about. So it doesn't surprise me that you would have that kind of knowledge. Thank you again, Practice Dynamics. For those that don't know you, they need to go to your website. How do they get in touch with you if they want to?
Absolutely. My cell phone, I'm giving it to, because I love Georgia. My cell phone number, just call me or text me directly, area code 623-810-1352. You can also email me, Laci, LACI.Phillips, PHILLIPS, @practicedynamics.net. Or go to the website, guys, practicedynamics.net. Stalk me, hunt me down. I'm here for you.
I know I will find you. I know that. Lacey, thank you so much. You've always
Thank you so much.
Happy holidays to you, and we'll be talking, I anticipate, very soon.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone. Go get them, Trey.
Next up, Mr. Trey Witt, CPA, Dan Moses, dental-centric attorney, offices in Atlanta and Birmingham. Trey, I know you're keeping up to date what's going on in the year end and guidance and tax issues and planning. So I know you got a fantastic slide. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you run with that fantastic presentation. And I look forward to making lots of notes while you're speaking, as always. So Trey, without further ado, you're up, my friend.
Okay, Stuart, thank you. And first off, as Lacey was presenting, I was furiously taking notes. And so 100% everything Lacey just said. The notes that I took that have sort of a tie-in to my presentation and what I present to dentists on a regular basis is that protocols that effectively address the patient experience have a direct financial consequence. You guys are in a repetitive task environment. And so if you master the basics of patient experience, even marginal improvements in things that you do every single day will have a remarkable financial consequence to you. And so, yeah, I actually wrote down Lacey's cell phone number too. She may not appreciate me bugging her, but but I may be bugging you, Lacey. So thank you so much. And also thanks to Stuart and the Georgia Dental Association for hosting us today. Very grateful. And as Stuart mentioned, I recently opened an office in Atlanta. I'm based out of Birmingham, but I am really jazzed about getting over into Georgia in a more meaningful way. I am a Georgia boy. I was born and raised in Albany, Georgia, or as many of you might know it, Albany, Georgia. And so the idea of being in Georgia on a more in a more meaningful way is very exciting to me. And COVID willing, I'd like to occupy my office in Georgia a little bit more than I have thus far. So thank you for your attendance, and thanks, Stuart, and to Georgia Dental Association. I am going to, Ellie, if you will let me share my screen. I do have some presentation slides to share with you, and if I can't do that, then I don't have to have the presentation. But I'm just going to wait for a second to see if my screen sharing will be allowed. Okay, no, that's okay. I don't need that. The first thing I want to talk to you guys about is tax rates. Oh, hang tight. I think I do have the ability to share my screen now. Hang on, people. Okay. All right, here we are. So, so here we go. I'm going to talk about tax rates first, and this is a little bit mundane, and it's probably a topic that you know quite well, but it's really foundational to the rest of what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time just talking about rates themselves. Why do we talk about rates? Well, thinking about, okay, we've got a new president that's coming in, and gee whiz, he may want to raise taxes on us. How does that look? Well, oftentimes when tax legislation hits the books, it's not that income and deductions really change all that much. Yes, they play around with depreciation rules and things like that, but mostly what we're concerned about are the rates. So right now we've got rates that go as high as 37%, but those are fairly low historically. And so we've paid tax, at least in the last 20 years, at a high rate of 39.6%. And so we need to be really attuned to rates and what's going to happen here. So let's talk first about your marginal rate. Your marginal rate is basically the rate at which your last dollar of taxable income is taxed. You probably know that as your income progresses, you stair step through ever increasing rates, the last rate being 37%. So why does this matter? Well, it matters because when you're talking to me at year end and we're saying, okay, well, how do I minimize my taxes? Well, I'll give you the laundry list of things that I think you ought to consider. But really what ultimately matters to you is, okay, what's the tax value of those deductions? I mean, if I end up spending $50,000 on a new piece of equipment and my marginal rate is 35%, well, what does that actually mean in real dollars? Well, in this case, that purchase is going to save you $17,500 in federal income tax. And so what you need to weigh there is, okay, the financial consequence of that decision. Okay, I'm about to part with $50,000. I'm either going to write a check or I'm going to finance it. You balance that against, okay, but Uncle Sam is going to be paying $17,500 of that. You know, how does that interplay work? Do I really need this piece of equipment, and is the tax savings worth the expenditure itself? And so knowing what your marginal tax rate is going to help you make more informed choices, especially at year end when you're trying to do kind of the last minute. We're in the last 2 weeks of the year. What can we do at the finish line in order to drive a better tax result? Next up is your effective tax rate. Your effective tax rate is basically your average rate. So if you're paying tax at that 35% tax rate, you're not paying all of your tax at 35%. You're stair-stepping up to 35%. And so what that means to you is that really your effective rate or your average rate is probably closer to 27%. Why does this matter? It matters because it helps you budget for your own tax obligation. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't call me or your CPA and ask, okay, well, how am I looking on taxes? Am I ahead? Am I behind? Sure, you can always do that, but you can also self-manage your tax obligation by just doing a check every once in a while on, okay, how much income have I earned and how much tax should I have paid in on that income? And so I give you an example here of if you know that your effective rate is 27% and you made $100,000 in the first quarter, then you know that either through wage withholding or estimated tax payments or some combination of both, you probably ought to have $27,000 in the hopper with Uncle Sam in order to stay current. Now, one way to get fired as a CPA, and one way that you can fire your CPA, is for your CPA not to keep you informed on what your tax obligations are until you file your federal income tax return and your state income tax return. And so we try to dodge that. That's not good for our business, and it's certainly not good for your financial well-being not to be apprised on where you stand with your taxes. And so my goal as a CPA, one, is tax minimization, but number two, tax budgeting, so that you know how much you're going to have to pay in plenty of time for you to budget for that. I hate it when we deliver a tax return and there's an outcome that we didn't expect and really that the taxpayer didn't expect. And so knowing what your effective tax rate is helps you with this, but then also meaningful communication with your CPA throughout the year also helps. The more you chat with your CPA, the less likely it is that you'll have an unexpected outcome. Okay, so tax forecast for 2021. What do we expect? Do I expect a tax increase in 2021? No, I really don't. And, you know, I read a lot and I hear a lot, and there are a lot of people that think that we are due for a tax increase really only because Biden got elected last month. I do not think that is going to be the case. Why? Well, you may not know this, but there are two Senate runoffs. Maybe it's gotten a little bit of publicity in Georgia. But the outcome of those elections really dictate who controls the Senate and the legislative agenda for at least the next 2 years. And so if the Republicans hold on to one of those seats, then there will be really little, if any, chance of a tax increase making it to the president's desk for signature. Let's say that both of the Georgia Senate races go to the Democrats. Even then, I think that you've got a block of moderate Democrats that would probably side with the Republicans on an increase in tax. It's interesting because the Senate is basically 50-50 right now. And so, but party allegiances aside, I just don't think that there are enough votes sitting out there, regardless of the Georgia races, to swing a tax increase into 2021. And lastly, we're in a pandemic. Unemployment is still high. Business owners and workers are still suffering at at historical rates, really. And so to raise taxes on anybody during a pandemic, I think, is just politically untenable. So I think I'm right. I'll be willing to come back on here and tell you that I was wrong, but I don't think I am. I just don't see a tax increase. So what does that mean for your tax strategy for the last 2 weeks of the year and then going forward? Okay, well, the normal playbook for CPAs is accelerate your expenses and defer income. And I think that is an effective strategy for 2020. To the extent that you can prepay expenses or generate expenses that will offset practice income and other sources of household income, go for it. Deferring income, obviously you have less ability to control how cash comes in, but to the extent that you can push income out into 2021, we'll worry about that in 2021. Let's deal with 2020 first. And so to the extent that you can defer income, be it practice income or household income, do that. Now let's talk about some expenses that come to mind as far as what you could possibly do here in the last 2 weeks. Okay, staff bonuses, that may be happening anyway. A lot of my practices do Christmas bonuses or year-end bonuses, whatever you want to call them. And so that may be in the works, but I did want to alert you to Section 139 payments. And this may be something that's not on your radar. With the flurry of legislation, pandemic-related legislation that passed earlier this year, it may have fallen off your radar, but the entire country was considered a disaster area. And so what does that mean as far as this IRS code section? Well, it basically triggered this Section 179, which gives you the ability to make disaster relief payments to your employees that are deductible to you, but not taxable to your employees. Now, there's not a list of expenses that are approved by the IRS or not approved by the IRS. It's a very gray area. And so whenever you have a gray area in the tax rules, be conservative. Don't go crazy giving out bonuses and calling them Section 139 payments. Okay, so be conservative, but you do have this in your arsenal if you have employees that you would like to send some money to in a tax exempt way to them, but that you could capture the deduction in your practice. So look at that. Equipment purchases, that's always a good one because the way the depreciation rules work today and have worked for many years now is that you get a 100% write-off on any equipment purchase provided that it is placed into service by the end of the year. You don't have to pay for it, so you can finance it or you can be invoiced at another time, but so long as it's in service, you can go ahead and take that deduction in 2020. What I would caution you on is make sure that you need the equipment. I mean, sometimes you have a tail wagging the dog issue in that, hey, I'm going to buy this thing, but I don't really have a use for it. But I want to save tax money, so I'm going to buy it anyway. Well, don't do that. I mean, you still need to make financial decisions first and tax decisions second. But just know that if you have a need inside the practice, I'd rather, if you can get it delivered and installed and whatever in the last 2 weeks of the year, I'd rather you do it now than wait until January. Invest in your home office. I mean, listen, this may be small potatoes, but I'm actually working from my house and delivering this message from my home office. You do a lot of administrative tasks inside of your dental office, I am sure, but I'm also sure that you do a lot at home as well. So if your setup isn't what you need or isn't ideal for working from home, then spend some money there. Also invest in communication tools and training. I don't know yet how Zoom is going to work as far as patient communications are concerned. I mean, I do understand that telehealth is a thing in other medical specialties, and perhaps it is in your office as well. But what I do know is that people are going to expect you to be conversant and across a virtual platform like Zoom. And so if you need to spend a little bit of money on getting the appropriate communication tools and training, I think that's a great place to spend some money. And then lastly, contributions to scholarship granting organizations like Georgia Goal. A few years ago, we had the ability as individual taxpayers to make a charitable contribution to these scholarship granting organizations and get a charitable contribution deduction on our personal income tax returns and a credit against state tax in our home state. The IRS did not like that, and so they shut that down. They basically said, to the extent that you were given a state tax credit for your charitable contribution, we're going to reduce the deductibility of that charitable contribution. However, one loophole, you can make these contributions through your business if you have a reasonable expectation of a return on that investment. And an example of a return on investment is positive PR, right? Hey, I'm giving money to schools in my community through this organization. The IRS says that's okay. So it's kind of a weird position for the IRS to take, because they're telling you on one hand, as an individual taxpayer, you can't do it, but as a business owner, you can do that. And most of you guys practice either in LLCs or S corporations that pass that tax reporting and tax paying obligation down to you individually. If you make those payments through your practice, then they are blessed by the IRS. And so look into that. I think that's a nice strategy. Most people would rather fund a school than fund their state government anyway. So give it a look and see if it's appealing to you. Personal deductions to consider. Now, when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 was passed almost exactly 3 years ago, the standard deduction increased, really it doubled. It went from about $12,000 for a married taxpayer to $24,000 for a married taxpayer. And in doing that, they also limited some of the itemized deductions that were previously available to us. And so at least in my practice, I've got a lot more taxpayers taking the standard deduction than they ever did in years past. And so what's a strategy to consider here in order to get the greatest tax value out of your possible itemized deductions? And so you see on my slide, I've said go big or save your money and take the standard deduction. Let me tell you what I mean here. You've got the big three of itemized deductions. You've got a state and local tax deduction, but as you probably know, that deduction is capped at $10,000 a year. And so there's not a whole lot of wiggle room there. So state taxes paid, real estate taxes paid, car tags, all of that all go into this $10,000 cap. And so there's not a whole lot that you can do to change your outcome as far as that deduction is concerned. However, mortgage interest, you can make make an extra mortgage payment on your primary residence, your vacation home, your rental property, you name it, and possibly capture an extra month of mortgage interest on your personal taxes. I like this idea, but not every year. And I'm going to get to that when I talk about the charity side of things. With respect to charity, what I'm suggesting that you do is make 2 years of your general charitable contributions in 2020, and then make no charitable contributions in 2021 and take the standard deduction, and then repeat your charitable contribution deduction for 2 years in 2022. So your place of worship, your alma mater, other charities that you fund on a regular basis, what I would say is double up every other year, because what I want to have happen for you is I don't want you to crawl over the standard deduction amount. I don't want your itemized deductions to be $25,000, $26,000, because that's pretty tax inefficient. I would be delighted if your itemized deductions were $50,000 in one year and almost zero in the next, because you're getting more bang for your buck that way. So give that some thought as you're making your year-end plans. Last topic, PPP. There's a lot of stuff going on right now about PPP, and most of you guys are probably applying for your loan forgiveness now or will be soon. I've noticed in my practice that lenders are itching for you to go ahead and apply for forgiveness now, because I think that they don't want to be swamped with forgiveness applications in the spring and the summer. They want to go ahead and get it off their books and send it up to SBA for whatever SBA is going to do with this. So I am totally fine with you going ahead and doing that. In fact, part of our practice right now is either completing those applications on behalf of our clients or reviewing their work before they submit it. Okay, but what about taxes? I heard something about, we may have a tax event here with respect to loan forgiveness. Right now, the answer to that is yes, we do have a tax event. The loan forgiveness itself is not taxable, but the IRS has said that the expenses that are funded with your forgiven loan are not deductible. So effectively, if you paid, 10 weeks of payroll with your PPP money, I'm sorry, but that payroll is not deductible right now. Well, that's not really the outcome that Congress intended when they passed the law, but that's the IRS's position. And unless Congress steps in and changes it, we're stuck with some really bad tax outcomes here, because you had to spend all of that PPP money in order to obtain loan forgiveness. So you're going to have to budget for the taxes out of another pool of money, which is bad. And so don't get too upset just yet, because in the most recent discussions that I've seen on this COVID relief package, it does include a provision whereby those expenses would be made by legislative action deductible. Now, what I'm hearing is that, oh gosh, this is a double dip that's afforded to wealthy taxpayers. Obviously, I disagree with that characterization, but there's a lot of labeling here that this is just a handout to the rich. So it's not a slam dunk that this gets passed, but the fact that it is even in the package right now, I think is very encouraging. And I'd be a little bit surprised if they ended up making those expenses not deductible. So anyway, just follow that. There's nothing to be done on your side. But hope, and maybe call your congressperson. But beyond that, that's it. And so I'm going to put my contact information up here. And Stuart, I know that you've probably got a few questions for me. If we don't address your questions in the presentation today, I've given you my telephone number and my email address. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm glad to help in any way that I can. So Stuart, I'll kick it back to you.
Thank you, buddy. And what we're going to do is, during my presentation, we'll ask those members who are participating in the webinar to send in under the chat some questions, and we'll take one or two questions that seem to be the flavor of the webinar. Right now, we really don't have any, but if you have some, put them in the chat, and we'll try to get, say the one or two afterwards. Trey, thank you. As always, informative. And I know that we got about 2 weeks left, so now's a good time. So, Trey, thanks a lot, and we will circle back after my portion of the event. So,
great.
Thank you, sir. And then what we'll do is we'll put up some slides now that we'll take a Trey, can you send back to the host on your end?
Yes, I can. If I can figure out how to do that, Stuart, I'm sorry. Stuart, I think I've got it to where you can access your slides now. I'm not sure that I've done that correctly as far as giving you the hosting back, but I'll work on that if you want to get going.
There we go. Great.
Okay, good.
All right. So the legal side, I tell you what, there has been enormous things going on the legal side from March to now, and what do we need to look at 2021 going forward? And we're going to cover a couple items that are really hot topics right now. Teledentistry. Teledentistry right now is absolutely huge. And as a whole, teledentistry is about 10 years behind the medical field, but we're going to go over some things that can be implemented now. And then employers mitigate risk of COVID-19. What do you guys need to be doing now to mitigate the risk going forward? A lot of discussion right now on mandatory flu shots. A lot of commentary. There was additional guidance that was just issued about 2 days ago from the EEOC. We're going to go through that. And then, of course, 2021 internal audit and compliance review. So let's take a look at the teledentistry side. Where are we at on that? Teledentistry, it is absolutely here to stay. There's no question about it. And I'm going to encourage our doctors now, either you get on board or you will be left in the dust with competition. So teledentistry in the United States is expected to explode. Well, it's already exploded, I can tell you that. And it's expected to even get even bigger on the telemedicine side. The government is relaxing guidelines for these. Now, what's happening is that from a state standpoint, Georgia is a little bit behind schedule, if you will, as far as compliance issues go. So teledentistry provides, of course, faster care. It keeps the patients out of the emergency room, which is absolutely critical. So concerns, a lot of concerns, compliance, HIPAA, licensing, credentialing, technology, and malpractice exposure. Teledentistry is absolutely here to stay. So how do you implement that without going hog wild, if you will? There's some very basic things that you can do and can implement as far as that goes on the teledentistry side. We'll go to the next slide. So what are the modalities? What are the means of teledentistry? There's 4 scenarios. And what we're probably going to do is have another podcast that I'll do a present on teledentistry a little bit more detail. But right now, live video, synchronous. Store and forward, asynchronous. Now on the medicine side, that is by far the most popular right now, being used by physicians. And we are very fortunate in that a lot of our physician clients and telemedicine clients are really on the forefront of asynchronous. So that is a modality that really is popular right now. Now, I would tell you it's got some compliance issues, but still, that is the most popular. Remote patient monitoring, RPM, again, another modality. Mobile health, mHealth, mobile communication by cell phones, tablets, and other forms of electronic devices. These 4 right here, every dental office in the country has some source of means to implement these. Everyone's got a cell phone. Everyone's got a cell phone. Tablets and other forms of devices. These are absolutely easy technology issues to implement. So then again, what do we do? So we'll go to the next slide. So let's back up. So screening patients. So what happens is is that your patients are coming in to your office and you're asking them these same questions. Well, why in the world would you have to wait for a patient to come in your office to ask these questions? What are you asking them? Do you have a fever, cough, or shortness of breath? Why can't that be done over electronic communication? Have you ever been tested for COVID-19? Again, why would you wait for someone to come in your office to ask if they've been tested? Has any family member been tested? Have you ever been exposed to anyone with symptoms of COVID-19? Have you recently traveled to another country? Are you a healthcare worker or work in a high-risk job? Law enforcement, trucking, grocery store. These are the questions that can be done a day or two in advance of your patient coming in, instead of having them already in your office and exposed. So again, easy steps, easy steps. Let's move to the next one. So how do we mitigate COVID-19 lawsuits? We saw March, April, May, a flurry of lawsuits. And what it did was it actually exposed our clients to deficiencies in their internal operations. So the most critical thing that you can do, and it's an easy step, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. One bite at a time. So first step, employee manual policies. As Lacey talked earlier, you have to have policies and procedures in place. It is no longer optional. Again, what happened is COVID-19, it really exposed how deficient a lot of our clients were. And I'm going to tell you, as a whole, I'm going to say about 80 to 90% of our clients were absolutely deficient in this area. So employee manual, key provisions, non-harassment. In dental offices, one of the main complaints is sexual harassment. Anti-discrimination, anti-retaliation. This is going to go right to OSHA. So you're going to find that your OSHA complaints are going to rise because your employees are going to be disgruntled to a certain extent as to what you may be doing from a protectionary standpoint. They're not happy with you, whatever. And when you get this letter from OSHA, you cannot fire your employees simply because you can't fire, you can't demote, simply because they filed a complaint. There's other avenues to choose, but you can't do the retaliatory action, because then you go into the whistleblower statute, which has a lot of penalties and a lot of issues to deal with. The Family Medical Leave Act, the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act, the Emergency Family, and then the FFCRA. These are critical things that you have to implement today, no longer optional. And then, how do you mitigate risk? You educate your team as to what's expected from a legal and risk management standpoint. Education is the key. The days are gone when you can expect your employees to know these things. What occurs in a dental office, you have to educate them. So then now we're seeing an absolute uptick, and we're going to see things going on from an uptick standpoint. So what has to happen now? If you didn't have it before, you've got to have it now. Preparing a COVID-19 workplace safety plan. A lot of our doctors say, we have no idea what that is. You got to implement communicating the plan to the employees, ensuring compliance with the plan. So what happens if you implement it and no one complies with it? Investigating and addressing any reported concerns. I'm strongly recommending now that our offices implement, I don't care if it's 1 or 40 offices, an absolute plan to address written reported concerns. You have to have those policies in place. In the medical side, on the dental side, if you don't have those, you are asking for trouble. And then you have to document the investigation process and outcome. So all of a sudden you get a complaint. Now you got to investigate it. So what's the outcome? Is that recorded? Is it in writing? You have to have these. These are the mitigation risks, the lawsuits. And these are not going to be going away. Litigation, we're going to find, is going to be even increasing. So now, uptick, COVID-19 protocols. What are your protocols for employees and patients that test positive? We get these calls, I don't know how many times a week. Had an employee test positive? Had a patient test positive? Do you have anything in place? Is it written? If it's not written, you must get this in place. Again, Lacey talked about protocols, systems. What is your system for this? It's all mitigation. In today's world, in the legal side, it's all risk management, deflection of liability. So now, the hot topic of the day is mandatory employee shots. EEOC just came out with guidance on the 16th. So these are the things that they are saying. If you are going to mandate flu shots and COVID-19 shots, which we do not recommend. I do not recommend that you mandate these flu shots, COVID-19 shots. Because if you mandate those, you are subject to the EEOC rules, the American with Disabilities Act, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and exemptions that come under that. Yes, a dental office with 5 employees that mandate flu shots is subject to all these. Title II, Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, Pregnancy Discrimination Act. Those are all things that if you mandate flu shots, mandate COVID-19 shots, you have to be very careful that you do not violate these particular rules. You can suggest, you can recommend. I would not mandate these shots. Other considerations: employee safety, reasonable accommodations for refusal, religious reasons, allergies, and business necessity. If you take nothing else away today from this slide, this is it right here. Because this, now everything is coming: shots, access, front line, 1A, 1B, all the way down the line. Who's first, who's second? Critical issues right here. So, 2021 internal audit and compliance review. What we discovered in that when this hit, March, April, our doctors had no idea how bad off they were internally. So now here's some checklists we got to take a look at. So COVID-19 changed HR like no other time in history. HR pre-COVID-19 was absolutely ignored. Now it's mandatory. Now we got state law concerns, federal law concerns, mandatory checklists. If you are not on our email list, we've been sending out a series of checklists that we feel that every office should have a mandate as to what they need now going forward into 2021. So what are your risk management checklists? Basic stuff right here, basic stuff. Employee manual. We see manuals that are 8, 10, 15 years old, and I'm telling you, if they're that old, shred them and start fresh. We get all these calls all the time. We've been working on a manual for 6 months, and my office manager can't get it done that quick. It should not take 6 months to do an office manual. If you have a staff member working on a manual for 6 months, 1, they're not up to date. 2, they have no idea what the compliance of the law is. And sometimes you get these massive commercial employee manuals that are 6, 8 volumes. Do you know what kind of exposure you're going to have if you get those kind of manuals? Employee files. Do you have employee files? Can you find the employee files? Who's in charge of the employee files? Do you have the files starting in-house? Are the employees in charge of their own personnel files? What happens if that employee leaves? I'll guarantee you their files going with them. What are your practice policies? Have you changed your recruiting and hiring process? We have some practices that have had a 90% turnover, and they had absolutely no recruiting or no hiring process. Do you have the forms? Complaints? Do you have a separate reporting process? What are your job classifications? Employee, contractor. This is where you get into the financial side, the CPA side. Big difference between employee and contractor. What are your benefits? What are your benefits now to your employees? Are you up to date and are you prepared for OSHA and HIPAA compliance? And also, are you prepared for a complaint if it's filed? So that's going to be our last slide. But these are, I'm gonna go back. These are your basics right here. Right here. These are the things you need. I can't stress this enough on the audit side. So that is our last slide. If you have any questions or concerns, I could have talked probably 5 hours on each topic, but on the last slide, if you have any questions, please send us a note. We'll be glad to try to do whatever we can to answer any questions. Right now, we're going to take a couple questions, sort of what we see a commonality in the questions, and then let's see if we can get Trey back up on the screen and maybe he and I could answer a question or two. Let's see, what do we have question-wise? Trey, we're getting some questions on the CPA side. The 139 payments, was it $1,000 per employee? Can you maybe elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yeah, and I'm only, there's no bright line as it relates to those 139 payments. I just think that you're at higher risk the higher those payments go. The guidance that I am giving is just make sure that you document the methodology for making those payments, what those payments are intended to cover, what sort of hardships that your employees may have encountered. In an IRS audit situation, if you've got documentation for what you did, you will almost always win. But if you don't have documentation for what you did, you will almost always lose.
Well, I'm trying to see if we have any more. Those are really the only questions that we've really received, is the 139. I guess no one had questions on the legal side or the practice side. Well, we have concluded our webinar, and a couple things. Trey, thank you again. There's a lot of stuff for our doctors to do in the next 2 weeks. You gave us some valuable information, and also how they can keep in touch with you. And then, one question: how long to hold employee files? You hold employee files, obviously, of course, while they're still employed. I would hold those probably 7 years, probably after that, because of potential IRS audits. Trey, do you have any thoughts on those from an audit standpoint? How long they want to keep those employee files from an audit standpoint?
Well, from an audit standpoint, we typically request that employers keep files for the statute of limitations period plus 1 year. And so that in a lot of tax matters, that is, you have a 6-year look back. And so keep your employee files for 7, just to be on the safe side. I think that if you dispose of those files beyond 7 years, I think you're fine.
Okay, good. Well, we're going to go in and conclude. Again, Trey, thank you. I know Lacey had to jump off. Again, thank you to the GVA for allowing us to present this. And I would say, if you just pick up one good thing from a webinar, it's worth its weight in gold. So, Trey, thank you. Everyone that has attended, it's going to get better. We want to take a look at compliance, take a look at the financial side, and we got to keep grinding away and get through this. And 2021 is going to be a great year, I can already tell. And wish everyone happy holidays, and thank you again for everyone for joining us. Have a great weekend.